It was October 27th, 1962. The world was standing on the edge of the abyss. The Cuban Missile Crisis had reached its most dangerous moment, and at any second, the standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union could have turned into something irreversible: a nuclear war. Both superpowers were fully armed, watching each other closely, waiting for the smallest mistake. Washington was demanding that Moscow remove its nuclear missiles from Cuba, an island located less than 200 kilometers from the American coast. Those missiles, still being assembled, had the power to strike major U.S. cities within minutes. To the United States, this was an unacceptable threat. To the Soviet Union, it was a strategic answer to American weapons placed near its own borders. On October 22nd, President John F. Kennedy addressed the nation. He revealed the existence of the missile sites and announced extraordinary defensive measures. U.S. naval forces were deployed across the Caribbean, and a naval blockade was established around Cuba. Its purpose was simple: prevent any additional military equipment from reaching the island and force the Soviet Union to retreat. Moscow responded by placing its military on high alert. Soviet ships already in the region were ordered to hold their positions. Among them was a fleet of submarines sent to patrol the waters around Cuba. Officially, their mission was reconnaissance. What the world did not know was that some of those submarines were carrying nuclear-armed torpedoes. One of them was submarine B-59. The B-59 was designed to operate in the freezing waters of the Northern Hemisphere. The Caribbean heat pushed the vessel beyond its limits. The air conditioning system failed. Temperatures inside the submarine became unbearable. Oxygen levels dropped. The crew was exhausted, dehydrated, and under extreme psychological pressure. To make matters worse, the submarine lost all communication with Moscow and the rest of the Soviet fleet. Cut off from the surface world, the crew began to believe that war had already started. Earlier that day, B-59 had increased its speed and was detected by U.S. naval forces. An American destroyer began dropping practice depth charges, non-lethal explosives intended to force the submarine to surface. To the Americans, it was a warning. Inside the B-59, it felt like an attack. Explosions echoed through the hull. The heat became suffocating. The air grew thinner by the minute. With no contact from command and explosions shaking the submarine, the crew became convinced that the United States had launched the first strike and that Moscow might already be destroyed. B-59 was not an ordinary submarine. It was built to launch nuclear torpedoes. On board was a weapon with destructive power comparable to the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. According to Soviet protocol, launching a nuclear torpedo did not require direct authorization from Moscow. It only required unanimous approval from the three highest-ranking officers on board. The submarine's captain, Valentin Savitsky, was reaching his breaking point. Believing the submarine was under attack, he called an emergency meeting with the senior officers. Overcome by heat, fear, and anger, Savitsky argued that launching the nuclear torpedo was the only honorable response. According to later testimony, he shouted that they would die with dignity, sinking the enemy, rather than return home in shame. Another officer agreed with him. Only one man stood in the way. His name was Vasili Arkhipov. Arkhipov was the second in command of the submarine. Unlike the others, he remained calm. He questioned the situation. There was no official confirmation of war, no direct orders from Moscow, no clear proof that the explosions were real attacks. Only fear, confusion, and pressure. Arkhipov refused to authorize the launch. The decision placed him directly against his captain and the weight of the moment, but Arkhipov was respected. The year before, he had risked his life by exposing himself to radiation to help contain a reactor accident on another submarine. His reputation carried authority. After intense debate, Savitsky finally backed down. The submarine surfaced. Hours later, in the early morning of October 28th, the United States and the Soviet Union reached an agreement. The Soviet missiles in Cuba would be dismantled. In return, the United States would quietly remove its nuclear weapons from Turkey. The most dangerous moment of the Cold War was over. The world never realized how close it had come to annihilation. When the submarines returned home, the crews were not celebrated. Instead, they were criticized. According to later accounts, senior officers suggested it would have been better if they had died at sea than returned without victory. Vasili Arkhipov ended his military career without recognition. He died in 1998 at the age of 72, never receiving medals or public praise for his actions. Years later, testimonies and declassified documents changed everything. In 2007, the director of the U.S. National Security Archive publicly stated that Arkhipov had truly saved the world. In 2018, he was posthumously awarded the Future of Life Award for preventing nuclear catastrophe. Historians agree that if the torpedo had been launched, retaliation would have been immediate. A nuclear exchange would have followed. Europe would have been devastated. Millions would have died. Vasili Arkhipov was not a president. He was not a famous general. He made his decision without cameras, applause, or recognition. He was just a man inside a submarine, surrounded by fear, heat, and silence, and because he said no, the world survived.